is set somewhere in America, sometime in the future.
Future.
We do not. Yes, it is a historic future. Yeah, I think it's it's post Great Extinction, and there's society was chaotic for a while, very nomadic. And finally, a few people put together armies to protect the few, and the world has 7 barons that each sit on a critical natural resource, and they each control one, and they all work in cahoots. But there's it's basically a very violent, very brutal world where there's no guns, and there are just martial arts armies, and whoever there's no inheritance of like a king would pass down bloodlines. None of that exists. It's basically dog eat dog, and whoever can get to the top of the hill survives.
And how many styles of martial arts there are in the series?
It's infinite. These guys drove on.
I mean, every martial artist has a different style. So
we have like Chinese kung fu. We have Krav Maga. We have a little bit of jiu-jitsu, ninjutsu, Muay Thai. Yeah.
I mean, basically we drew from elements of this genre, the martial arts genre that we liked, and kind of made our own mashup of it. So it's a mix of styles, trying to create a new dynamic style and something that's fresh and new for American television, because we definitely haven't seen this kind of fighting on American television before. And so we really wanted to up that game and try to not just stick with one style, but use whatever is dynamic with any martial arts style. And in that way, it's kind of like Bruce Lee's martial arts philosophy, which is don't stick to one thing. Do what works best for you. Use what works best for you. And in this case, we're doing that stylistically as well for the fighting action. To make it expensive.
The truth is, in order to do it right, do it the way that these guys do it, it takes a lot of time. And in America, shoot days are too expensive to do it the Hong Kong style. But we've kind of designed a way of doing that, and it's not without its expense. But this is the first time anyone's ever tried to actually do it and mount it successfully for television like this. And you've never seen anything like that.
It definitely takes a specific type of team, because we work 2 units. We have a main unit, which is for all the, theatrics, and then we have, for all the drama, and then a fight unit for all the martial arts. And, both of them sort of intertwine in certain ways. We have to work around each other, and, at the end of the day, still come together as one whole project. So I think really, we have sort of a dream team with Steven and Master Didi and David and Daniel, all of them holding it together creatively and martial arts.
The color palette is kind of relates to, especially with the costume, relates to the different groups.
Different barons.
So our Baron Quinn is the armadillo, and they will wear sort of crimson color. The Widow is the butterflies, and they have this aqua blue green color. And those are sort of helping to differentiate the different groups and their barons and how they interact with each other. And then because of the color palette of the visuals in general.
Well, the show was, Alan Miles, when we first spoke about it, we're very specific about not wanting it to be a dusty apocalypse, that we just have seen that before so many times, and they actually had a really good justification for believing that, the world after people actually grows back and overgrows. It's a lush vision of the future. And it just seemed really cool to kind of do a Western type concept of, this lone warrior in a version of the world that didn't have that. So we wanted to make it really jewel tones, like emeralds and golds and the rubies, and we wanted to have a lot of color. We wanted it to be poppy and fun and stand out. Of course, because the poppies are red as well.
Well, we had a fight camp for the actors who had no martial arts experience before, and it was a 6-week fight camp with Didi and Steven, and trying to get first of all, assessing what they could do, because people have natural abilities, natural talents. Like Aramis is naturally athletic, so we figured out what we can use of his natural abilities that would help in the fighting sequences, and then also teach him new things as well. You cannot become a martial arts expert in 6 weeks, but what we can do is pick and choose the best of what these people have naturally, and accentuate those and make it better. But then also teach them as basics as well, basic roundhouse kicks, basic all this stuff we didn't know as well. So we had that here. For me, myself, I hadn't done a martial arts action piece in a long time, like 8 years or something like that. And so I started preparing probably in at least August, because I am older than him. So it takes a little bit while to make sure, and I've also had serious injuries. I've torn an ACL, broken an ankle, all those things. And so for me, it was a slower process at the beginning, and then I ramped it up again once I knew my body was handling it well. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it, is training. Hours. I mean, the fight camp was like 9 to 6 every day.
One of the things that happened very early on, Stephen and I started working very early, kind of collaborating on like, how do we do this and what is it, you know, and I'd done a Jackie Chan movie, so I knew a certain amount, but Stephen was still kind of opening other doors for me into like, there was this moment when we were looking at different movies and talking about different styles and just on YouTube, and he's like, you do know you're watching all the best people in the world do this? And I was like, honestly, that had never, and I went to all the producers in the network, I said, there's an issue here with this, because the challenge is, the real Hong Kong style is that you see the performer doing the stunts. That's why Matrix was a breakthrough. That's what it is. That's what the language is. They're long takes of performance, and why they're exciting is because there's no edits the way American films cut around with doubles. And so the challenge became, well, dude, what can you do with the people? And what Stephen and Dee Dee did that was brilliant is, you know, you can see with Emily and Aramis and a lot, and obviously with Daniel, like, they're doing their stuff, and the distance they got them from the first day of camp. I'm still not sure how you got this done. To honestly, if you come and show me stuff that he was doing with it, that was you doing double flips off, you know, these elevated places, and I was like, I can't believe he's doing that. Like, that's nuts. So they, you know, we should talk a little bit about that, about assessing everybody's abilities and what you did, because he did get it to finally, by the time we were shooting, people were doing amazing stuff that honestly you wouldn't believe they could do.
Well, first let me tell you guys a little bit about how we set up the boot camp. It's just like basically it was about 2 months, and then we started at 9 o'clock, and then the first part they would do like warm-up stuff, and then we would teach them some maybe some Tai Chi basic stuff, and basically stands, and then they would take their breaks, and then after lunch we start having them like get on wires, because we do a lot of wire work. And that would go on for another 3 hours. And then after that, me and Massady would start choreographing the scenes, and then we would shoot it with our stunt guys, and then we'd send it over to David. And, you know, and then we talk, and day in, day out, same thing, over and over again. So
but we had picked like certain weapons for scenes, and then like they would modify and learn. And I mean, like what was amazing is like, I shouldn't say that story, but I really wanted you to have 2 swords. And then he was like, you should have a short sword and a long sword, okay, which was really a brilliant idea. And then it was, you had done that, you knew it, but there was, you needed the right swords of the right weight, but we're designing all the weapons. So there was this race to get the weapons designed, locked, created into your hands for the right weight, the daggers for the widow, the sword, all these things. So they had to train everybody and then design fighting. And by the way, then the fighting becomes even more complex, because when he walks onto a set, he sees a bunch of props, and all of a sudden it becomes, oh, I'm going to use that, I'm going to use that. And you and Master Dee Dee are just like, pull everything in. So like, the whole martial arts thing and how Stephen directed and created it, because we paid attention to story, 3 acts inside of it. You want character work to be unfolding. People learn about each other through the fight. Like the really great cinema in Hong Kong and in Japan, and you know, between Wong Kar-wai and Kurosawa, they're still part of the storytelling. And so all that stuff is really, really important, and it all has to be completely believable, because as soon as someone doesn't look amazing at what they're doing, you're like, well, how can they survive in this world? So we should talk a little bit about the weapons trade, because like where you ended up with, like, especially honestly with Emily,
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah.
you know, like all the classic martial arts films that you guys have probably seen, like Crouching Tiger. It's so good. It's so good because it's even the martial arts is also character driven. So that's what we want to do with Into the Badlands. Like with the widow, she's like a vicious, stealthy baron. So we gave her like flying daggers. She also has like fighting daggers, and she's got like two pretty short, narrow. Like I don't know how you define that sword, but it's pretty. It's like a short Chinese sword.
It's like a sai.
A little bit longer, but it's more elegant than, let's say, the Sunny Sword. The Sunny Sword is a brutal, long, straight sword. Hers are more elegant and dainty, but also deadly as well.
So as you could see in the trailer, it's like she fights fast, and she throws, like ninja style, like knives out, and that's the style that we want her to have, as opposed to, let's say, Quinn. He's like the most powerful baron, so he's like the king, so he doesn't have to fight a lot, not like Sonny, so he doesn't have to have something very fast, and so she's got like a broad, long sword, so we want that to be like something brutal, power, him is about power, and with Sonny, he's like, he's like the most lethal clicker there is, so he pulls his sword out a lot, so sometimes he'll use the long sword, and then sometimes for close quarter combat, he'll like ball his short one. So these are like the styles that we have to establish very early on, because we have to design the weapon, make it, and we break a lot of them.
The emotional core of the story is about, it starts with there's a boy who's trying to find his way home, and there's a man who has never had a home, but he's slowly discovering, Quinn, this man who was his father, not his real father, but a father that saved him and brought him up, trained him to be the man that he is today. It's discovering that your father is a horrible man, and trying to understand how you get out from underneath that when there's not really an escape. And it's a little bit like being in a gangster movie where you discover, hey man, I want to get out now, and there's nobody leaves. So that dynamic is there, and together I think they end up on a journey to enlightenment is how we always think of all of this in terms of the great Chinese epic storytelling, and the fact that he's carrying the burden of all the people that he's killed, and how does he move forward from that? He's starting to be affected and carry the weight of that. He's having an awakening already at the beginning of the show, and this boy walks in who's very pure and has a very simple emotional journey, and he can't stand to see that boy's journey not continue, and he also realizes that the boy may be his chance to get out. So it's beautiful because the lines are very simple, but I think of a movie like Shane or any of the great westerns, and it has all those very, very simple elements of character to it. I love it. I love that you pushed that out. I don't know if we don't have the extremities that they have, as far as like they have snow, they have like, Italy, or wherever they're shooting all that stuff.
Huge castles.
Yeah, huge castles and stuff. And we have a world that's so much less populated and sparse and just finding its way back onto its feet as a civilization. But I think that the color palette and being able to identify people, especially when you start to see, from a base place, when armies start fighting, you need to identify them too. And I also like the fact that the characters each have colors that are kind of specific to themselves and you can identify them with. But we hope we imbue the kind of feeling that you get in a show like Game of Thrones when you cut to the Watch, you feel a certain way, and when you cut to Westeros, you feel totally different. And big cinema,
we have that element.
We have
on a smaller scale, like our fort, where Quinn is at, it has a specific feel, specific color scheme. Then when you go to the Widow's fort, her lodge, it's a different name, the lodge, the fort, there's a masculine feeling about the fort. You go to her place and there's this kind of more sophisticated element. There's books around, there's art around, there's things like that that sort of represent her character, what she's about, what she's trying to view upon her followers.
It might feel a bit more real, just because the fort is really the biggest, you know, Quinn, he's the most powerful baron in the Badlands, he's the biggest baron in the Badlands, so he overlooks everything, and controls so much, not only in the fort, but also, you know, just in the Badlands in general. So I think it's going to be interesting for people to see, you know, the lodge. There's, you know, more freedom of speech, and there's more, it's less organized government, I guess, that Quinn has really created.
The Widow's introducing new ideas.
Yeah.
She's the first female baron, and she trains girls to fight, and like there are things that she's doing that are really revolutionary. But like any person at the forefront of a bunch of ideas, it's very extreme, and it has a lack of humanity to it as well. It's very brutal because she's, you know, trying to win this idea through. But it's really fascinating how much depth and detail these guys have kept up and put into the show. It's a very complete world. It's very, very hard to find, you know, unless you're coming out of a novel. It's very hard to find a world that's been this well thought.
Traditionally, the martial arts movies like Choi Hark or the Wuxian or the Shaw Brothers are very good in action and very melodramatic because of the Chinese sensibility. So how do you handle that tone to fit into the Western world? Because sometimes it could be displaced in terms of the audience, you know, that broad.
This show is really a mashup of kind of Hong Kong wuxia style action, but with the sensibilities of Western style drama. So we don't have the melodrama that's so prevalent in wuxia films. But it's a drama that's compelling and equivalent to what you're seeing on television today. That's drawing audiences in by the characters, by the story, and all that stuff that is actually disappearing from films nowadays. So we're using those two elements and mashing them together and trying to create a cohesive whole.
You know, it's like for a long time, honestly, superhero films had no emotional core. And then along came Batman Begins or X-Men, and all of a sudden, you know, you have characters that are experiencing the Holocaust, being torn away from their parents, justifying why they became a bad guy, you know what I mean? But not a bad guy, just somebody with a different set of ideas. Or, you know, in Batman Begins, here's the true psychological makeup of someone who becomes a vigilante with all the money in the world to become an icon. And what Nolan did there was he justified that character, and Sam did it in Spider-Man as well. So, you know, but before that it was a cartoon, you know, a live-action cartoon, and like, there is no reason why this kind of cinema for American audiences, you know. By the way, I would go so far as to say I believe Crouching Tiger was a big breakthrough, because Crouching Tiger did accomplish true emotional drama with quality, and that story is so powerful. But no one's done it and brought it to the screen in this way, and so it's really cool to bring it to television.
One thing about, you know, the hero in films and TV now is that, you know, it used to be very black and white. There was always the good guy, there was always the bad guy. Well, now there's sort of that gray area that everybody, you know, it's just a spectrum that everybody, you know, is set in on. And, you know, in the Badlands, it's very apparent, you know, although, you know, you may look at me and Sonny as protagonists, and maybe the Widow as an antagonist, you know, a lot of people could see, you know, the Widow's ideas as being more, being better than our ideas. It's very gray. You don't know exactly who's the good guy and who's the bad guy.
Well, it's also interesting because it allows audiences to choose characters that
Yeah,
they like,
who they
follow.
Yeah.
You know, Sonny and MK is the sort of lead story, but there's all these other side stories that are equally as interesting, and that I think different audiences will like different elements of the show. I mean, I'm sure the boys will like the action for sure, but I think the girls will like what the Widow stands for, and her group, the Butterflies, and what they do is empowering feminine ideas.
I think you hit on something.
Brutality, by the way. The women are just as brutal. We wanted it when everything is dropped, when people fight. It's an equal arena for anybody in the world. And stuff like that was really cool. That's right.
I think that's one of 5 or 6 or even more. I mean, that's definitely a foundation for the show, but
Right.
I mean, you know, it's characters and stories all piled on top of that.
But I love what you're saying, which is that, you know, you even think back to like Silence of the Lambs. That is just a genre. It's just executed at the highest level with brilliant casting and performances, and they elevated it, and all of a sudden it wins Best Picture. You know what I mean? And honestly, it is not different than another 20 movies like it, except the fact that the artistic choices and integrity somehow raised to the level where you're invested in the characters. And we also like to think of this show in a way, like we've always talked about the fact that every character, this show's about survival in a brutal world. And what would you do to survive? And every character kind of represents a different way of getting through that, path through that brutality.
I'm going to swap you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. She's taken under her wing a bunch of young girls, and she's been training them as skilled fighters. And I think the symbol of the butterfly is kind of she kind of sees that sort of metaphorically as a symbol for her and these young girls rising out of the bad experiences they had in their past. They were abused, and she had an abusive husband, and I like breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a bold and powerful and free butterfly. And she uses that a lot when kind of talking to the girls, and she's very protective of them, guiding them. So I think it's kind of a symbol of strength and femininity, like strength, a feminine, strong symbol. Yeah. Oh, God, yeah, tons, yeah, loads, yeah. I watch an awful lot of Kung Fu movies, thinking that would help me with the martial arts, but yeah, we just, there was no preparing for what we were going to do. It was like very difficult martial arts, but we had like a really intensive 5-week training, and that, that's all you needed, yeah. The training camp, it was really challenging, not only physically but mentally as well. It was exhausting, and especially in the New Orleans heat, we were training in like serious heat, and we had to become more flexible and build muscles in my body that I hadn't used before, like the stomach muscles and everything, because you have to do the same moves repeatedly on wires at bizarre angles, and fighting against huge men who are twice the size of me, and you have to just, be really fast and agile, and it was, it was exciting and tiring, challenging.
How did you come up with the idea of the show, since you're the creators?
Yeah, we'd always, we wanted to do a martial arts show. I mean, the first films we did in Hollywood were, Lethal 4 with Jet Li, and Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights with Jackie Chan. And it was something that, it's such a wonderful sort of form that, but you don't really see it on television, because usually they don't give the time to actually do it correctly. And so when we went in and pitched the show, the first thing we said was, you have 8 days to shoot an episode, but then you're going to need simultaneously 8 days for a fight unit to actually be able to do these fights properly and get all the pieces and really be, true to the authentic Hong Kong sort of martial arts style.
The other thing we wanted to do was really elevate the idea of a martial arts. What could a martial arts show be? Because that wouldn't just be about martial arts, it would be about real characters, real emotion, that a story and drama people would follow. In the vein of Crouch's Tiger, there's actually that women would like, and that the drama would be as magical and involving as the action. So it wouldn't just be about martial arts and fights. Like a cop show, it would be something that would be more elevated and more interesting and more original. And so the idea of this became a science fiction series, really, at its core. Even though it borrows sort of visually elements from the Victorian era. So it's just, how do you reinvent this genre and pull from all Asian cultures, from Japanese cinema, from Kurosawa, from Chinese cinema, Hong Kong cinema, and do this deliberate mashup of Asia and Western, especially Western Westerns, and make it feel and be authentic to itself. So it's uniquely original. And I think you see the trailer, it's certainly, you've seen nothing like this in terms of a world creation that feels real and different and textured. The idea this is a distressed future, but also the idea that almost like the jungle, the environment is encroaching, that things are crumbling, that it's moldy, it's sweaty, it's dirty, that it has a authenticity and a veracity to it, how it feels and looks. It's very important.
Yeah, it was it was a very interesting setup of the show. And obviously we have to set out, you're right, the best story you can tell.
And create the best characters and do the best casting. And it's giving the show soul and heart. And that you really get the way to get in terms of a martial arts fight to be great is that you've got to care about who's fighting. And that's all about the work you do as character creation and the relationships. If you have the characters entering a fight that you really care about, then the fight's going to be much better than if it's just guys fighting, women fighting. So it's like that's the difference between a B movie and something that's more elevated. The reason The Walking Dead works is that you really care about those people and that they're jeopardy. So that was our aim for this, that we really, if you care about these people and their emotional journeys and their dilemmas, then you will care when they get into fights, and that will elevate the martial arts too.
Well, like I said, we had an 8-day fight unit, and what we did is we offset the fight unit from the main unit, so that actors could move back and forth to be able to do the fight.
It's a 3D chess game.
Yeah, it's a 3D chess game. Well, we've written a lot of martial arts movies, and we always write out the fight sequences. We did it for Jackie, we did it for Jed, and so what you have to do is make sure all the story points and the emotional beats are within the fight, and they have to be scripted. And then
we usually find an environment or a concept. So, for example, we have a sword fight in the rain. That was in the first episode. The concept was a sword fight in the rain, which would be involving our hero, Sonny. And so then it's how does that work within the emotion? But then how do we practically build a set that has rain towers, and how we're going to shoot 8 days in the rain? What does that mean for wardrobe and vehicles, and in terms of like practicalities, how are you going to drain a set of water for 8 days? How are you going to keep actors from freezing so under their things they're wearing wetsuits? So it's all there are practicalities of production, but also you want the visual power of that sequence.
I think Lydia begins to have literally begins an understanding of I think she has seen herself as many women do in relation to she is a wife or a mother or some sort of part of a larger picture. I think during the course of our story she finds an old copy of A Room of One's Own, and what I'm allowed to say, but there is a moment when she begins to question everything the way she has lived her life, and that maybe she wasn't that person. Maybe she was somebody who has a human life. So it's
and that's true of a lot of the characters in the show, that they're all actually reaching a crisis point in their lives. Marton has a crisis, so it's and the widow is also like struggling at this point. So it's all about people in crisis. And,
So Marton, you play a lot of villains in your career. So what do you make to decide to do this?
Well, because of my career, I played lots of different characters, but the more commercial things seem to be in people's movies.
Yeah.
But I thought this is an adventure. It was there were many aspects that I liked. It wasn't sort of a straight line of the story at all. It's influenced by all the things that have been discussed already. It has an Oriental quality, it has a Victorian quality, a neo-Victorian quality. It has the potential to be a parable for the life that we live now, while maintaining an older storytelling structure, but thrown into the future, and have the adept pen of Al and Miles, who go inside the world that we're articulating and comment philosophically and psychologically upon the human condition. And the women are very strong. It's a whole universe, and is a metaphor for what we endure every day in very heightened circumstances in the future. So it brings out Darwinian qualities in people, and it also brings out existential questions too. And they live, love, die in this very unusual world.
Your fighting style looks more medieval, is that right?
Yeah, samurai with a broadsword, so it has a medieval aspect, yes, but also has some the long list of martial arts styles that Stephen Fung and Master DD utilized. It's a hybrid of things.
As a writer, name selection is one of the key elements that we obsess about and think about and change as we write dialogue and the character evolves in the first drafts. So why characters are named what they are is very important. The sound of the name, the way people say names is very important. I think even in real life, people's names, to know who they are. If you meet Sean or David or Marton, they have a certain name. It means something to figure out who they are from their name. That's true on the show too. As the show goes, we'll peel back and discover the backstories of the characters, how they came to be where they are now in this world. So yes, I think that's certainly something that will be explored as we head into the Badlands.
The Hong Kong style of martial arts, the crew, the stunt crew, are friends forever. Jackie Chan works with them like 20 years ago, so they know each other like intimately, so they know how to miss a punch. And so how do you work that into your show? How do you handle that?
Well, basically, you have the person who is going to double for the actor trains the actor. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of that, and then it's all, again, as Emily said and Martin said, they have this training which they really want to get you, flexible in using muscles and knowing how to do things over and over again, and then you train with their team and choreograph with their team, and then the team can sometimes doubles for you or doubles for the person that you're going to be fighting against.
That's it. I think you'd be amazed at how much that everyone does.
Yeah.
And then you'll never know what's a double and what's the real actor.
Yeah.
That's the point of the technique that we're using. That when you see Marton in a big fight with one of our other characters, that you'll see Marton. And same with Emily. When she fights, you really feel she's doing all of it.
Yeah.
So it's just the skill set of people like Stephen Fung and DD Coops. They know what moments to pick the real actor, what moments to double. So it's a magic trick, but it works.
Especially in TV.
Yes, well, the world building is key to a show like this, and we spent a lot of time talking about the visual palette and how this show would be different, and that we didn't want to verge into cliche or venture into the dusty Book of Eli, Mad Max, desaturation, desert. It's a deliberate choice to go for saturation, to go for jungle. One of the inspirations was Chernobyl, which is now 30 years after Chernobyl. It's now become it was a paradise for wildlife, a refuge, and that nature's taken over and encroached. Even Angkor Wat, you see nature's it's incredibly strong, it's violent, and it's much stronger than man. So the idea that this world has the facade of respectability, but actually if you look closely, everything is distressed. There's sweaty bedsteads, the curtains are moldy and ripped. It's a distressed future, which is sort of like a facade that the barons have put on. And that each baron has a very distinct look, and they've taken things from the past and sort of turned them into their own. So Quinn, in his Clipper Force, where red vests, and it's minimalist, I'd say minimalist samurai Asian. There's another baron we meet called Jacoby, and his clippers wear tartan. And there's a steampunk neo-Victorian feel to the show, which is deliberate in terms of its aesthetic. So you look at the show, it feels like it's almost set in the past. But actually look closely, everything's streamlined, everything's much more, it has a futuristic edge to it in terms of the design of particularly the wardrobe. So Lydia and Jade, who are the twins, detectives, and wife, their outfits actually are modeled after classic 1970s Holston outfits. So it's this, if you look closely, it all works as a whole. And the colors are Lydia's color is purple, for example. Jade's color is blue. So the choice of color palettes per character is very deliberate. The Widow's is black, but the butterflies are jewel tone. So it's really looking at the show in a very deliberate way that when you see these characters, you'll know who they are. So it's really important that the choices of color and silhouette for the wardrobe were very specific. And again, it's all about trying to create an original wall that you hadn't seen before.
In martial arts, classic martial arts films from the 60s and the 70s, you know, the wardrobe and the weapon defined the character. You didn't need anything more, just like that. So as an actor, how do you make a character like that tridimensional in terms of deepen, you know, the character, not just going for the iconic image only?
All the combination of things that have been discussed. Wardrobe's obviously very important, and that's going to there's a neo-Victorian element. So there's there's a cummerbund and a high collar. There's long lines in the trousers and boots. That's going to make me, whether I like it or not, walk in a certain way, and I can adapt accordingly. But it gives an elevation. It's a baron of an elevation, and then the color. Red, it says obviously passion, desire, lust, blood, all those kinds of things, royalty. Within the words that we have, and the overall structure of the story, I try and look for a psychological archetype, and then bring detail into that based upon the work that an actor should do and can do. So there's animal work, and there's psychological work, how to speak, what accent, what rhythms, how does this person think, and accordingly how do they see the world around them, and then the world, of course, informs how they behave based upon their interpersonal relationships. And power is a strong driving force in this world. Everybody needs to survive. Who do they trust? Betrayal. We're dealing in that kind of currency. So do you build somebody up for your own benefit? You always have to be careful that they don't usurp you. Will they? Won't they? And will if I'm building somebody up, will I undercut them at some stage? But you have to keep. In some ways, it's a very expansive world, also a very small world, because it turns on a small area, and you can be knocked off any second. It's a vast world. At the same time, Emily, as the widow, if we were sitting in this proximity, might well be trusted, dagger in my side. Lydia and the husband and wife, could very well take a fork. No, but they also need each other. So the tension is enormous. And if you get rid of somebody, everybody else is going to come in and swarm.
It becomes like a power vacuum. I mean, the thing with the barons is they're sort of like part warlord, part sort of feudal king, and part mob boss, you know, and the Badlands, you know, the economics is they're all interrelated. They all control certain resources that they need from the other. So there's, you know, it's always the sort of uneasy alliance of those sort of nation states, as it were.